Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Pastor Jeff. We're going to pick up at Romans chapter 13, starting at verse 5. And we're going to build on what we just talked about, where God or Paul wrote about how God has an expectation or requirement that we subject ourselves to authority. So we're building on that in verse 5. It says, therefore, one must be in subjection to those in authority, as Paul just described in the previous verses, not only to avoid God's wrath, but also for the sake of conscience. So we are required to submit to government and governmental authorities because God requires it. Thus, if we go against that, we incur God's wrath. And also for the sake of conscience, if we go against government, we will be against the government man as well. So if you fight against government, you run the risk of being not only subject to judgment by the government, but also judgment by God. And so we need to make sure that we're living in peace and harmony with those around us and with government. And yes, there could be exceptions. And the particular one is when the government is requiring you to do something that goes against the tenets of God, that goes against the laws of God, goes against those things that God would call holy. And of course, yes, but that doesn't mean we fight against everything. That doesn't give us carte blanche to just fight against government in all ways, because not everything is against God. It's not against God to have speeding limits. It's not against God to have no trespassing. It's not against God to have so many of the laws of the land. But when those laws come against the things that we must do as Christians to please God, then that's where we need to choose God over. But otherwise, we must, in order to please God, we must adhere to and be subject to the government, the laws, those who are in authority above us. And that's not only government, but maybe we're also our bosses. So it goes on to verse 6. It says, for because of this, you also pay taxes, for the authorities are ministers of God, tending to this very thing. So Paul wants to point out, we are to pay taxes. Now, the Israelites paid taxes to the Romans, and the Romans used that for whatever they used it for, even if they didn't like it. A lot of that money went back to Rome, and the Israelites got no benefit from those taxes paid. You can at least say in our country that as we pay taxes, hey, they maintain the roads, they use it for government programs to help us. So at least in this country that we live in the United States, the taxes in many ways provide value to the country. Now, we may object to some of the ways that government uses taxes. I get that. And guess what? Romans did not use the taxes in ways that were pleasing to God, but God still says you pay them. It's not a reason not to pay them. So the authorities are ministers of God. That means God has put them in charge for a purpose. And yes, they may do evil, they may do things that go against God, but that does not mean that God does not have a plan for them. And so they're attending to the government, this very thing, the government. That goes on in 7, it says, pay to all what is owed to them. So Paul's making a point. We must pay to everyone. You don't get to say, well, that person's evil, so I don't have to pay him, even though I owe him. That's not, we don't get to say that. We don't get to say, I don't like that person, so I don't have to pay him. We don't get to say, well, that person was good when I owed him money and borrowed the money, but now they're bad, so I don't have to pay him. No, you pay. Pay. And again, Paul is talking about paying to Rome and the Romans. So our government is much better than Nero. And he says, taxes to whom taxes are owed. So whether it's state or local taxes, pay it. Revenue, to whom revenue is owed. And if you owe rent, you pay your rent. If you have a lease on a car, you pay the car. If you borrow money for a car, you pay the car payment. You must pay for what you owe. That's the way it is. And respect. Now we're going from taxes to payments to obeying authority, and now we get to respect to whom respect is owed. You must respect those in position of authority, even if you don't like them. There's different types of respect, and this is a respect of authority. You must respect the police officer's authority, even if you don't like him, even if you think he's a bad person, he has the authority of a police officer. You must respect that. You don't get to choose not to respect that. If your kid was in school, they needed to respect the principal, or else they were going to get punished. They were going to get detention all the time. Respect. You need to respect the president because he's president. Maybe you don't like him. Maybe you think he's dumb. Maybe you think he's got bad ideas. Doesn't matter which president, you respect their position of authority because that authority was given to them by God. So respect whom respect is owed, and honor to whom honor is owed. You need to honor those people in places of authority as well. You need to show them respect. You need to show them honor. And they have that by the authority that they have. You need to respect and honor your boss because he's your boss. He might be a jerk. He might be someone who's not a respectful person. He might be someone who you would think is the farthest from a Christian, but he's your boss. You still must respect him because he's your boss. You still must give him the honor due that position. This is not about earning. There's a certain level of personal respect that someone must earn from me. But even before they earn that personal level of respect, I still give them the respect and honor they deserve for their position, for their authority. So when I meet a police officer, I respect him for his position of authority, and I give him the honor that he's earned by that. I may not have that personal respect for him because I don't know him as an individual, but I give him the respect for that position he holds. And that's what Paul's talking about here, is you, as Christians, again, live at peace. And this is part of living at peace. We need to recognize that within the world we have and where we live and things, we must show respect and honor to those around us, even because of their position, even if we don't like them, even if we think they're doing against God's, they still deserve respect and authority. Amen.